Good evening and welcome to this discussion on the U.S. elections 2024. My name is George Maringa. Sign language interpreter tonight is Catherine Simaloy. In just a few hours, the United States of America will head into an election to elect their 47th president. Will it be Donald Trump, the Republican candidate and former president, or will it be Vice President and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris? And what especially do these elections and the results mean for our country, especially Kenya? Tonight, we are privileged to be joined by a panel of guests, both here in Nairobi and joining us from the US. Here in the studio, I'm joined by Mark Bichachi on my immediate right. He is an analyst and communications strategist. Thank you and welcome to the studio.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Stephen Degwa is an international relations expert. Welcome, Stephen. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. And joining us from the US is James Stanley, a political analyst, Benson Cheserek, business and political analyst, as well as George Maringa. He's a freelancer in the USA and a graduate student. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Right, let's get the discussion on the road, and I'll begin with you, Mark. There is a lot of hue and cry, and whenever the US sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold.
Yes.
Of what importance is it, especially for Kenya, to follow and notice keenly the election in the US? Why is it so relevant, one would ask, in the first place?
There are a number of reasons, and let's start here. Let me pick up from your analogy that if the United States catches a flu, then the whole world catches a very high fever. We must remember that the world is already at fever pitch. We must remember, for example, that there's still a war going on in Ukraine. There's still the Israel-Palestine issue, and there's still the next door to the United States, there's the Haiti issue, and many other issues in the world. So what is going to happen in the States is going to affect all of these regions. It is going to affect it in major ways. Now, Kenya is involved in two ways. It's involved in the peacekeeping mission in Haiti, but also it is affected by the fortunes of the Russia-Ukraine battle. By that time being, our food prices are affected by that particular battle and things like that. So it is important that Kenya follows that. But also, Kenya was recently designated a key NATO ally, and what that does is it means that Kenya is closely linked, at least in terms of international diplomacy and international relations, closely linked to the United States, but also more so since these particular discussions happened with the Democrats. What would it mean if Donald Trump was to come in? So, for example, if we are to look at the Israel-Gaza Strip debacle, we know for a fact that Donald Trump has told Israel that it needs to do what it needs to do. So we expect an escalation in Israel, whereas if Trump wins, if I was Zelensky, I would surrender the next day. The next day. Yes.
Before we cross over to the gentleman in the United States, Stephen, yes, in terms of relations, international relations, yes, Kenya and the US marked 60 years, yes, culminated in a state visit. Yes. Of what importance would the decision of the 5th of November have on the relations between Kenya and the US?
I think, first of all, I will take it from where Bikachi left just a bit and touch on the importance of, or the geopolitical importance of the elections of the US to the world. Yes. It's good that we are checking all this, and I saw one of our local journalists who is in CNN, on CNN, interviewing people on the streets today, and Kenyans are saying that they love Trump. So, and I think there's a way in that. I will not go into our local politics of why people want Trump to come in. but then America as it is now, it's the barometer of democracy in the world. And we can see that it is starting, it's a giant, yes, but it's starting to wobble a bit, okay? America is not the America that used to be there. You can see even in Africa now, African countries are standing up to the US. If what we go by the press, Niger, for example, Botswana is the latest to tell the US, you know what, you need to pack up your bases and, leave us alone. So there is that significance, yes, but it is because there's no other power right now, okay? So the US elections are important because then if Trump comes in, we can predict. You know, Trump actually is predictable. Going by the first time, we can predict what is going to happen. Yeah, and even with the state visit, we might start forgetting a lot of things that the U.S. has promised, and not even that the U.S. were to give us. Anyway, to be honest, that is a lot of tokenism, which was supposed to send just some symbolic message to the rest of Africa that, you know, if you play ball with us, we can, you know, we can do this. And Africa is becoming, and the US can see Africa is becoming restless. So they needed to start showing some semblance of, you know, interest in Africa. Mm-hmm. So I think going forward, Africa is not in the radar so much in these elections. Actually, the two big issues that are being canvassed is the not even the Ukraine-Russia right now. It's the Israel-Hamas. That is a major issue now. Okay. Okay. Russia and Ukraine seem to be taking a back, you know, a back whatever. Mm-hmm. But the Israel-Gaza has, I mean, Israel-Hamas has a bigger geopolitical importance because of the Middle East, mm-hmm. and we know that when the Middle East is unstable, then actually the whole world is unstable, especially in oil and so forth. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
James Stanley, thank you for joining us from the US. There have been concerns, and you know, especially from the Kenyan community, going by the reports we are getting of the fears of either you know, candidates coming in. What is the mood like, especially on the victory of either candidates from Kenyans? What are you getting from the ground? Yeah, we will be getting back to James in a short while. Benson, good evening. How are you? How is it in North Carolina, especially with the Kenyan community as well?
I think this is
we seem to have a stream issue. We'll be getting that fixed. Gentlemen, I don't know whether George Maringa, you can hear us. You're outside the White House? Okay, fine. We'll be fixing a few issues here and there to be able to get our guests from North Carolina, Washington, DC as well. But just back to you, Bichachi. There has been a lot of expectation and speculation about who could win this election, and the Kenyan community, I'm sure you've seen the reports on that. Should they be worried over anything, if need be?
Not really. The kind of agreements that Kenya has and the kind of relationships that Kenya has will not vary on whether the fortunes fall on the Republican or Democrat side. I don't see Kamala Harris coming and doing quite a big change to what Biden would have done, and I don't see Trump doing that either. Although Kenya has been locked in a trade conversation with the United States for the better part of 6 years now that we are yet to conclude. And then, of course, there is the trade pact that was there for Africa that is due to lapse in 2025. So that's going to be the free access agreement, AGOA, when it comes to an end. What is going to happen? I think that is in terms of our economy, the biggest thing to watch out for. But I do not think that either Trump or Harris will change significantly how that agreement would have come into place or how replacing AGOA is going to be, because they clearly have higher priorities. But number two, we must also speak to why Kenyans feel quite connected to this issue, and that's the issue of religion and what the Americans will call LGBTQ rights. And there's a very strong feeling, Kenya being religious, as we know, that Trump represents the right and moral path, and Harris represents freedom for the LGBTQ. So that is a psychological issue, given that the pressures of the West do affect how Kenyans and indeed Africans have made these choices before. We've seen documentaries of how the decision to be quite tough on LGBTQ issues in Uganda was affected by the Americans, but that is not going to be affected by who is president, because the NGOs and the different organizations that push either side of the agenda will continue to do what they're doing. So in terms of Kenyans' fortunes and things like that, it's all going to affect. In fact, either president will want Kenya to work harder in Haiti, for example. They will want to keep our forces there and probably even bolster it, because clearly immigration is another big issue in this election, and Trump has said, for example, that Haitians are eating dogs and cats and things like that. It might be taken as a joke, but I'll tell you as a communications person, it's a strong issue. If I want to scare you, I either tell you your wife, your children, or your pets are in danger, and that is part of the psychological impact that it is having. So it is very clear that those will be the issues, but for Kenya economically, we should be fine. I think the bigger issue would be around our moral compass and where we feel like either Harris or Trump is leading this world, literally, because that's what they do, towards.
Stephen, when we look at even the events that have happened, especially between Kenya and the United States, the African continent as a whole, the conversation about the BRICS, joining the BRICS as well. Is it at a point, and of course you saw what C.S. Mbadi said about the IMF and whatever was happening there.
Going to line up in Washington.
Yeah, we're lining up in Washington.
Yeah.
The conversation, especially on economic partnerships, is really key between Kenya and the United States. Where are we now? Are we at a time where, we will see a proper trajectory going upwards?
Not at all.
Okay.
I think I'm cynical about what Kenya, as a symbol of Africa, can gain from the US. If you look at what the US has done in Kenya, it's basically firefighting for us, okay? The US brings millions of dollars worth of condoms, worth of malaria drugs, worth of, things that are supposed to alleviate our problems, yeah? But you tell them to put the same kind of money in developing our infrastructure, our healthcare system, and whatever, physical benefits. They don't. So if you look at AGOA, for example, can you say it has transformed any region in Kenya? There's AGOA, there's always shifting of goals. Okay, shifting of goals. When you're going to achieve them, they say, okay, there's a new set of rules, AGOA, If you want to bring horticulture, these are the new standards, the new EU standards, to take the conversation out to the West in general. So I think what we as Kenyans, as the symbol of Africa, must decide is what do we want, because we cannot continue to be beggars, and beggars have no choice, okay? So whoever comes in, actually we are irrelevant. It is just that now they cannot tell us, because they need us for their own interests. Because unless something is of particular interest to the US, they will not put so much trouble in it, okay? And I said as far, apart from the firefighting. So I think it's for us to start demanding some form of equal treatment when it comes to negotiations. So I don't know how our leadership can do that, but there's a way that we can get concessions from the US. So we tell them, if you want to have, for example, a military base in Kenya, it's not for free. We should be able to get real value, from them. I was looking at Ireland for just the other day. Ireland now have a budget surplus of I don't know how many billions of dollars. And I was looking at why they have that is because they find Google, I don't know how much money, and all that. They get money from people who owe them money. So they got it from them, okay? If you look at Russia, has also found Google, I don't know how many zillions. So I think it must come to a point where we have leaders in Kenya and in Africa. I think I like to say Africa because Kenya to the US is really very small, and that is why sometimes they will laugh at us if we start talking about flexing our muscles in terms of what kind of trade relations we can have with them. Because just go and look at how much we trade with America, and look at even how a country like China, for example, trades with America. for us, what the trade with Kenya and the US is pocket money, okay? It's pocket change. When you look at, you know, the big boys, you know, even the US and Britain, the US and France and all that. So we are really small fry. So we must look at our niche. We must stop overrating ourselves, sit down and have a sober discussion about how we can get hold of these guys. Because for me, I'm sorry, but we are irrelevant in the bigger scheme of things. So, yes.
Well, you know, the truth is that Kenya's economy is smaller in magnitude than Elon Musk's value. As in this,
that's the point.
That's a reality.
Okay.
Elon Musk is trending towards 200 billion valuation. Kenya is at 110 billion. So he can buy us, our mothers, our children, our land and our chickens, and the United States economy will not change. So that's really how it is. However, Kenya is strategically important. One, it is the entry point to East Africa. And East Africa is a big part of Africa. Number two, Kenya is known as the big brother and the peacemaker in the region. When Ethiopia wants negotiators, they come from Kenya. South Sudan, they come from Kenya. We saw one of the leaders of the fight between Hemedti was in Nairobi, seeking solutions from Nairobi. So in terms of the geopolitical influence and as a gateway to Eastern Africa, Nairobi and Kenya is very critical. It's very important. It's not something that the United States can ignore. But also one of the things that is very important is that Kenya's ability to stand with the United States, stand with our allies in Europe, for example, as we've done in the EU and many other issues, is also very important. So it's a matter of leveraging our soft power versus the economic power to make that possible. But also at the same time, and this also becomes very important, you see that the United States, for example, is giving a ban to TikTok. Now, it's no small matter for one country to ban another's software. It's digital warfare. And soon Kenya will be caught up in that warfare, in the sense that will we be looking east or will we be looking west? There is the question of how much will Kenya be depending on the United States. So whereas the economic matters may not seem significant, the position and posture of Kenya throughout the history of its independence has become quite important for the states and other players that want to play. So yes, we do play an important role significantly. The United States has to figure out how they're putting in another $100 million into the Haiti program to make sure that continues, because whether they like it or not, Kenya is the only one who's willing to carry that burden for them. So there are places and avenues that we can actually negotiate and actually get our pound of flesh out of the deal.
Stephen,
yes.
Donald Trump has questioned the existence of NATO, and Kenya is a non-NATO ally. Bichachi alluded to that.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't seem to be an issue of concern really to Kamala,
yes.
Especially if, you know, Donald Trump were to win. What ramifications does this have, especially with this non-NATO ally membership that Kenya has? If you could debunk that for us and for our viewers.
Okay, I think from the beginning I saw the non-NATO ally kind of, it was a tokenism. I'll go back to that, yeah? Because it is just an enticement so that we can do the US bidding, okay? We are like another Ukraine. You can see the way Ukraine was used as a buffer against Russia. And now they have really been bombed, and I mean, and that was seems to be fading away now and leaving Russia and Ukraine to their own devices, okay? So in Kenya being that, I think the US wants to use us, for example, in Haiti. You see, if someone wants to use you, they must inflate your ego, okay? Because you're a small boy, but someone will tell you, okay, go fight, you know, you can fight that guy, you know? So you start feeling like you're David against Goliath, but in essence, it is, you know, I mean, even in school, you know, you can beat him, and then when you go there, you are hit, you know, a bad one, yeah? So I think if Trump comes, I think that would be a gone case. Actually, if Trump comes to power, I think a lot of what was done between Biden and Ruto is going to, Trump might not just trash it, but it will be off the radar, okay? If Kamala comes, there'll be maybe a constituent within the Democrats government that will still want that to continue. But basically, I think we are just being used again as a bulwark against some maybe other interests. It's like now, because the US has been unable to get hold of us in terms of infrastructure and all that, but they can get hold of our minds. Okay, so once they tell us you're NATO ally, so we are going to be having that for the next, several years, walking tall, but we are not going to get any benefit, because for me, is what benefit are we getting from getting this, apart from the PR, okay? So I think it's inconsequential either way, anyway.
If you could just hold that thought so that we engage James Stanley. He's back. Just hold that, Bichachi. James Stanley, good evening from Nairobi. How are you? Earlier on, I had asked you how is the mood of the Kenyan community in the US regarding especially this election?
As I said, I Washington State, and basically the more is very awful from the perspective of people looking at it back home. But here, as we can see, can you hear me?
Yeah, go on, James. Can you hear me, James?
Hello, can you hear? I can hear you.
Yes, please continue.
Okay, I was saying, yeah, when you look back from home, they think that because of the campaign that is going on, one presidential candidate, that is Donald Trump, when he talked of the immigrants. One thing that we want to assure people back home that the immigrant here, people are worried back home because they think, when Donald Trump comes in, he's gonna chase everyone because he's saying that. But as we know, there's the political strategy that one comes with. The political strategies that one comes with. And one person said that one of the presidential candidates, that's Harris Kamala, is more in supporting the rights of the LGBTQ, and DT is more in saying that the immigration has to be put in place. But I believe, like we always, nothing will change to other countries, because anytime the president comes, the policies are there, the constitution is there, and when they talk of the people to be sent away, they are criminal people. And I believe specifically people from Africa, they want, and all we are waiting is tomorrow, everyone to cast their vote, and the president is declared, and we keep going, building the economy of the United States.
Okay, indeed, thank you, James. We'll be coming to you again a little bit later on. James. Benson Chesrek, you are a business and political analyst. On matters trade, Kamala Harris has criticized Trump's sweeping plan to impose tariffs on the imports and calling it a national tax on working families, which will cost each household $4,000 a year. On Trump, however, he has said he will continue with his 2017 policies of not taxing the rich, and that also has been an issue of debate. Talk about the trickle-down effects, especially not only in the US, but also in Africa, and especially Kenya, and how this would be able to impact the economic and, infrastructure as well, rather economic and trade partnerships, especially between the two countries.
Thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to some of your guests momentarily, and the three very important issues that are going on here in the United States right now, and which is on the top of everything, is the inflation. It is women right issue, which is reproductive health, and the other one is immigration, of which my friend James just spoke about the immigration issues.
Yeah.
When we talk about the issue of inflation, taxation, and everything. Each of them have different views.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
is the approach of Donald Trump is you tax companies that bring things to the United States. In other words, if you manufacture things in Kenya, for instance, and you bring to the United States, Kamala Harris says we provide incentives to people here to be able to invest in the United States. So those are two different aspects of businesses that at the end of the day, or it will achieve one goal, to bring or to boost investments locally. And the scariest thing that I think most Americans don't like is the importation of things from China. If you impose a lot of tariffs, that means that whatever is imposed in the tariff, it's like if you impose tariffs on things that we import to our country. And that is the approach that both and you can see perception from both sides is different, but at the end of the day, they look into where the cost of things will go down. And that is one of the key issues when I say economy is the main cause here. And they view Donald Trump as the strongest guy in economy. And you can see majority of people will try to vote for him based on that. But when it comes down to the decision specifically, I live in North Carolina where economy is based on research. A lot of companies are coming here. There are very, very tiny margins might decide who will be the president of the United States.
Yeah, George Maringa, you're outside the White House. It's what I'd learned earlier. How is it like for you, and especially you as a student, a graduate student, in terms of young people who have, sought to explore, opportunities further afield? What are they saying, especially regarding this election?
Thank you for having me, George. I'm at outside the White House, and right now they are kind of barricading the place, as you can see behind me. Preparing the place for the military parade for the new administration, which is set to take over on January 21st, whoever wins between Kamala and President Donald Trump. So the big issue among the Gen Z and the young voters who have interacted with, it's the issue of economy, the issue of immigration, the issue of foreign policy, the issue of democracy, and also the issue of inflation. So those are the main issues which are being discussed. And when it comes to economy, Donald Trump is being touted as being one of the best, because some of the voters think when he was in charge during his first term, the economy was doing well. Right now, when Joe Biden took over, we kind of saw there's a bit of inflation, but right now the inflation is almost 2.1%. When it comes to the issue of reproductive rights in women, Donald Trump, the Republicans, you remember the Roe versus Wade, which was, they got rid of the Roe versus Wade. Right now, Donald Trump wants to impose federal law when it comes to ban abortion federally. So, and on the other end, Kamala Harris supports the issue of abortion. When it comes to the issue of LGBTQ rights, Kamala Harris has started to be supporting the issue of LGBTQ rights compared to Donald Trump. When it comes to the issue of foreign policy, you've kind of seen what's happening in the Middle East. We have seen the Biden foreign policy when it comes to the Middle East. You've seen some tensions in Iran, you've seen some tensions in Lebanon, you've seen some tensions in Gaza and Israel. And Donald Trump, actually, in one of his campaigns said when he takes over, he's going to ensure that when he's elected, like a president-elect, when he's confirmed with the Electoral Commission, he's going to talk to Putin, and he's also going to talk to Netanyahu over there, and that war is going to end. That's what he said. And also the issue of foreign policy is kind of a big issue for the United States, because when it comes to its allies like Israel, and also we have seen the other end, the Ukrainian war, and also most countries in NATO prefer Kamala compared to Donald Trump. You saw what happened in his first administration, in his first term during his administration. When it comes to the issue of democracy, more people think Kamala Harris will do better when it comes to democracy compared to Donald Trump. Reason being, you saw what happened on January 6th. During the insurrection, where some of his supporters actually attacked the Capitol. And right now, it all comes down to the 7 swing states. Whoever wins, it comes down to North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and South Carolina. So whoever wins, if Kamala wants to be elected to become the first woman president, she has to win the blue wall. That means she has to win Pennsylvania, she has to win Michigan, she has to win Wisconsin. For Trump, if he wants to get back and be the next president for his second term, he has to win Georgia. He also has to win North Carolina. He has to win either of Pennsylvania or Michigan, and he also has to ensure that he takes over Nevada, because these are the only swing states which actually are going to decide who's going to be the next president. Because right now, it's dead heat, neck to neck. No one can predict who's going to be the president. It all comes down to those 7 swing states. Whoever is going to win those 7 swing states, 4 out of the 7 is going to be the next president of the United States of America.
Indeed, a neck-and-neck race, a tight race is what we are witnessing in this 2024 election. We are taking a short break, still with my guests here in studio and those who are joining us from the US. Do stay with us. We are back in a short while.